So today we're going to talk about some zero exponents and negative exponents and what that means and how to simplify expressions that have those. So the first thing that we need to look at is a to the zero power. Okay, anything to the zero power is 1, right? If I have a to the zero power, it's 1. 5 to the zero power is 1. Okay, and I'm going to come over here and show you why it is that. Okay, if I gave you something like x to the 5th over x to the 5th, how many times can x to the 5th go into x to the 5th? 1 time, right? And 5 minus 5, if I subtracted that, would be x to the 0. Okay, or if I told you 4 squared over 4 squared. Well, 2 minus 2 is 0, and I know that 16 goes into 16 1 time. Okay, that's why that works. Anything to the 0 power is 1. The next thing we have to talk about is what happens if there's a negative exponent. Okay, I'm going to write it out here. I think this kind of makes it a little bit easier. A negative exponent tells you that factor is in the, I'm going to call it wrong part of the fraction. Okay, so a negative exponent is telling you that that factor is in the wrong part of a fraction. Okay, I'm actually going to turn the paper over, and you can turn it over if you want and write down this example. But if I told you that we had x squared over x to the 5th, okay, are there more x's in the numerator or the denominator, right? This would be x times x over x, 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 x. Are there more x's in the numerator or the denominator? There are 3 more x's in the denominator. So if I were to write this, I would get 1 over x to the 3rd. Okay, if I subtract these exponents, 2 minus 5 is x to the negative 3. So all it means is that when I subtracted these numbers, I got a negative because the bottom number was bigger. Okay, and we always want to write our numbers with a positive exponent. And then kind of the converse of that is if you had something like, let me flip it back over. If you have a negative exponent down here, that just means that it should be in the numerator. It should be 2 to the positive 3rd. Okay, so to make an exponent positive, you just need to move it to the other part of the fraction. Okay, I think the easiest way is to just do some. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit here. Letter A is 3 to the negative 2 power. So right now, this is in the numerator of a fraction, right? It's like saying 3 to the negative 2 over 1. So that's telling you, hey, that should actually be in the denominator to make it positive. That looks like a negative. And then 3 squared, what is happening to my paper? That looks janky. 3 squared is 9. So this is 1/9. Okay, let's look at letter B. Negative 7 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Final answer. Okay, let's look at letter C. So what we talked about, was it yesterday? Was that when you have quotients, everything gets raised to this negative 2 power, or to the whatever the power is. So I'm going to have 1 to the negative 2 power over 5 to the negative 2 power. Okay, here's where it's kind of getting crazy. Okay, that negative exponent, oh, what is happening? Is, sorry, my phone did something weird. It's telling you, hey, I'm in the wrong part of this fraction. Okay, move me to the other part. So 1 to the negative 2, it wants to come down here to be a positive exponent. 5 to the negative 2 wants to come to the numerator and be positive. 5 squared is 25 over 1 squared is 1. So crazy thing, 1/5 to the negative 2 power is just 25. Okay, let's talk about letter D. So 2/3 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Letter E. Negative 8 to the negative 2 power is the same thing as 1 over negative 8 to the positive 2 power, right? Negative 8 squared. Negative 8 times negative 8, positive 64. Let's look at letter F. It's 0 to the negative 5th power. So that means it's 1 over 0 to the 5th. Can you ever have 0 in a denominator? No. We are going to write undefined. Let's look at letter G. Hey, we have 1 over 2 to the negative 3rd. It's like, hey, I'm a negative exponent. I'm in the wrong part of the fraction. Move me up here so my exponent can be positive. So it's just 2 to the 3rd. 2 to the 3rd power is 8. The end. Letter H, negative 2 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay, and letter I looks really similar to letter G. It's a negative exponent, which tells you that it's in the wrong part of the fraction. So instead of being in the denominator, I need to move it up here to the numerator. Okay, and the reason I know you might be thinking, well, what happened to the 1? Well, 1 times 2 to the 3rd is just 2 to the 3rd. So 2 to the 4th power is 16. Let's look at J. Hey, what we talked about a couple days ago is that when you are multiplying and numbers that have a similar base or a like base, you add the exponents together. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Letter L, 1 over negative 3 to the 4th, or 3 to the negative 4th power, means, hey, I'm in the wrong part of that fraction. Move me up to the top. 3 to the 4th would be 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 27 times 3 is 81. So why don't you do this for me? Why don't you pause my video and let's do, why don't you try the rest of them? See how it goes, try the rest, and then come back and we'll check your answers. Okay, for letter N, right? Alert, alert, wrong part of the fraction. 1 over 4 to the negative 3rd is the same as 4 to the 3rd. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. On letter P, these are a similar or a like base. Negative 3 to the 5th times negative 3 to the negative 5th. You add those exponents. Negative 3 to the 0 power is 1. On letter K, we have a power being raised to a power. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. So that's 1 over 4 to the 4th power. Because, hey, I'm a negative exponent. I'm in the wrong part of the fraction. So 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. 64 times 4 is 256. On letter M, alert, alert. I'm in the wrong part of the fraction. Move me down here. So now I have 5 squared times 5 to the 1st. Well, we know that that's 5 to the 3rd, which is 125. Letter O, I have negative 3 times negative 1 is 5 to the 3rd. It's positive because it was a negative times a negative. So that's just 125. On Q, you should have brought alert, alert, I'm in the wrong part of the fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down. So now I have 1 over 6 squared times 6 squared. So 1 over 6 to the 4th power. Okay, let's see, 6 times 6. I'm going to cheat for the purpose of time here. 6 to the 4th power is 1 over 1,296. Right, and it's cool. If you have a calculator that does exponents, you can even check it and say, okay, 6 to the negative 2 power divided by 6 squared. Okay, so let's kind of keep in mind this number, 0.000771605. 1 over 1296, 0.000771605. Okay, on to letter R. So we have a product being raised to a power. You multiply all of the exponents by the power. So 2 to the first to the third is 2 to the third, x to the third, y to the negative 15th. So let's think about what we know and think about what we can write differently or put in different parts of the fraction. So 2 to the third is 8, x to the third, but then y to the 15th, or y to the negative 15th, to make it positive, we have to move it to the other part of the fraction. So we're going to put it in the denominator. And last but not least, letter S. So on letter S, this entire quantity, it's telling you I'm in the wrong part of this fraction. So instead of being 2x to the negative 2, I'm going to put it down here as 2x squared. And then in the numerator, I have y to the 5th. And then down here, I still have negative 4x squared y squared. So let's kind of see what we can simplify. So if I have y to the 5th over y to the 2nd, that means that there's 3 more y's on the top. 5 minus 2 is y to the 3rd. So in the numerator, I have y to the 3rd. In the denominator, I have 2 squared, which is 4, times negative 4 is negative 16. X squared times x squared would be x to the 4th.